Not super impressed. You? Still fire.
I liked it, but again, I've gotten this before.
Yeah.
I've gotten this exact same song. That was one of the moments from our reaction to Magic 3, the final installment in the Magic series, and also the last album between the legendary duo of Nas and Hit-Boy. So if you guys want to check out the full live album reaction on Patreon, check the pinned comment. But guys, let's jump into this official review. Let's start off with the artist performance, all right? Because a lot of people were questioning. This is the second album that they have together in 2023. They dropped 6 albums as a whole over the course of the past 3 years. So how do you feel about Nas on this album?
Well, my whole thing with this was going to be the fact that, like, okay, we're getting Magic 3. After just weeks of getting Magic 2, there wasn't that much of a break in between both projects. And I'm left wondering, was this project needed? Did they fulfill anything new? Was there a new direction, a new vision? And the main answer that I have is no. But going into the actual artist performance, the same way that I felt about Magic 2 is the same way that I now feel about Magic 3, where you're getting lower energy from Nas all across the board, in my opinion. Starting off with the intro Fever, you have Nas sort of giving you a super unnecessary hook. He has the whole represent chant calling back from Illmatic, and it doesn't feel like it needs to be there. And I feel like that was the case for a lot of cuts on this album, is that he gives you hooks when they're not really needed whatsoever, when he could just give you 3 verses that are all fire. And he's done it before. Look at songs like Purple or The Message. Those are amazing Nas songs that don't have any hooks. So I feel like there were some forced elements, song structure-wise, within this album that I didn't really enjoy too much. Speaking about energy, though, you have the song Never Die with Lil Wayne, where I do feel like he does sound a bit more passionate. And ultimately, the bars are still not blowing my mind. I don't know if you felt the same way, and we're not going to actually do a features category for this because Lil Wayne is the only feature, but how did you feel about that performance from Wayne and Nas together?
I think it could have been better, but even at that, it's kind of hard to judge this just because they're both in the latter half of their career, and I think that it's kind of like unjust to say that, like, oh, well, you know, they didn't give good performances. It wasn't anything crazy, but I mean, like, if you are a fan of both rappers, I think that, hey, you might enjoy it, but for me, it was like, okay, it was cool, it came and went. My problem, too, with the track list is that there's certain tracks in here and performances where I'm left wondering, how did this make the final cut? And then you kind of question the curation of it. So, example, something like Pretty Young Girl. That is one of the worst Nas performances that I've heard across not only the Magic trilogy, but the KD trilogy and even his earlier projects. But I want to get a bit more positive with the performances because I don't think this track list is a total letdown, at least for me, as far as performances go. I really like the first verse of Fever. I feel like he does lock into a nice flow there, and it's that classic Nas meditative, more aggressive sort of flow that you come to enjoy on projects like the KD series. Even something like Japanese Soul Bar, I like the way that he rides out that sample. It was super smooth, and those are the types of performances where I feel like you will find value out of the track list. But then you have to ask yourself the question, well, I just got a whole album of this maybe a month ago, or even let's say last year with the third installment of the KD series, and it's like, what's getting really upgraded? Then you could make a fair argument for that. Doesn't have to be in question because Nas is in the later half of his career and he's the GOAT. I mean, Lou and I both have him as our best rapper of all time. There's no doubt about that. It's just that was there more to this performance than meets the eye?
And I think that's why my sentiment maybe comes off as a bit more negative than it is positive, because when I talk about Nas, I'm talking about who I think is the greatest rapper of all time. So obviously we hold him to a certain bar and standard, but I just feel like I was let down ultimately by this, knowing what he's capable of. And I think the content has a big part to play into that, because it's when you get him giving you these more romantic love cuts where the performances aren't really top caliber. For example, on a song like Blue Bentley, I'm hearing some of the worst Nas flows I've ever heard. For example, when he's rapping, I can't be your lover, I'll leave the head fucked up like none other. It's elementary for Nas.
And not only that,
but
it feels
he's regressing almost.
But it also feels a bit choppy to a certain extent, especially after like getting these Hit-Boy productions. So listen, I think the artist performance was good. I don't think it was mid. I don't think it was subpar, but it's good. Whatever you take.
Yeah, I think it was good. I just feel like Nas sort of, took the elevator and instead of taking the stairs on this, in terms of not really challenging himself. And like you said, when he does try something new, he breaks a cool rhythm that he has to try out a choppy flow or to try out something that's a bit more modern sounding. Maybe that doesn't always pay off. But let's talk about the content, because with any Nas album, the pen game is always something that we really value. He's definitely one of the best wordsmiths of all time. And honestly speaking, of course, My favorite type of Nas is going to be that storytelling type of Nas, and you do get that on the songs, which are called
Based
was it
on
part
true
1 and
events.
part 2. Yeah, based on true events,
and then
exactly.
Based on true events, part 2. These are going to be slots number 8 and 9 on the album. And while yes, I do think that there was a bit of cool storytelling within the songs, I do feel like for Nas's standards, you kind of have to question certain things, and do they connect together as much as they could have?
I think the part 1 was really cool because he was actually talking about his real life friend Half a Mil, who passed away due to suicide, unfortunately, and sort of wrapping his head around that fact and how it affected him.
That part was amazing.
Yeah.
My only question was like the transition from the part 1 to part 2. It was like I ended up getting it when I went through Genius and when I gave my multiple listens. It was just maybe
the dialogue was messy a bit.
The dialogue was a bit messy, and then maybe for a new listener that hasn't gone through this experience off of first listen, that might be a bit hard for you. So use Genius for these tracks. You're gonna need them. But as far as like the heavy lyrical miracle sort of Nas that we enjoy, it's pretty substandard for Nas. That's nothing too crazy.
Like even a song like Sitting With My Thoughts, which just based off the title, you think you're going to be getting this like introspective masterclass. When you actually go into it, he's just throwing out random bars talking about how like, oh, Nipsey would have loved to have known that I'm working with Hit. Or him rapping about how like he loves his money machine, his money counter. And it's like, I thought this was about you sitting with your thoughts and really, being...
Well, I think the Nipsey bar was really cool. I feel like
it was cool. I'm just saying it's like narratively, the song was a bit all over the place, which is fine.
Like, maybe like if you were to expand, but that's just nitpicks,
That is nitpicks, but I have to tell you this, bro. There's songs on here like Pretty Young Girl where you're listening to the lyrics and you're like, if you had told me that this was Future or Lil Mosey that wrote these bars, I would believe that.
I know.
And that's shocking to me.
It is. You could go through some bars on there.
Her body shaped like a Jean-Paul Gaultier bottle.
I know. Those are bars that you don't want to hear on a Nas album. But I will say this. I feel like there's also missed opportunities in song structure for more expansion. So I was going through Fever again, which is the intro track on the album. And I love the way that he starts off this verse. So early on the wake up, cunning as the father of the 12 sons of Jacob, shake up the world, cake crumbs, cover my gold teeth, Kufkin's waiters, lobster sauce on aprons, pardon, that's the chef. So it's like, I like how you start off the rhyme structure and how like you get into the lyrics, but then it always has to maybe resort to, let's say, a flex or a sort of like a luxury bar. And while I do enjoy that from Nas, because I like the mogul talk, it's like, I've seen much better, especially in the KD series. Example, going to a song like Count Me In, for example, that's concentrated writing. That from start to finish in the verse, like that, you're going to find all kinds of meditative thoughts from Nas, and that's going to be on full expansion. Yeah. So I feel like that was maybe a bit missing from the project, if I'm being honest.
I agree with you. I think that like listeners like us and people that have been longtime fans of Nas love Nas for getting into that big brother talk, for him really sharing all the wisdom that he's had and accumulated over 30 years of a career. And I feel like you do get that on a song like I Love This Feeling, where he's rapping about the distractions that certain young cats get into and what leads them to slip up. If it's them trying to do outdo the next man, or trying to chase trends in hip hop, that felt like more of a focused cut. But that was a rare glimpse of that, throughout the track list for the most part. So I was a bit disappointed in that. And in terms of wasted opportunities, I do agree with you. For example, if you look at the song Superhero Status, I love the concept and idea of Nas claiming that him as a hip-hop great, his music could save lives and he could actually rescue people through his messaging. But then you go into the song and it's just half-baked, where lyrically he's not communicating the true power of his music. It's just sort of like loosely written, where he doesn't go beyond the surface. And I feel like that's the sentiment that I got from a lot of the writing, is that it sounds like it was written quickly, like a lot of this stuff was maybe freestyled, and that's not what you usually come to expect from a rapper like Nas.
Absolutely. So I think, listen, guys, you're going to enjoy the content. I mean, it's not anything subpar. Still one of the greatest lyricists and rappers to ever do it, but the content was good. It wasn't anything too crazy, and I do feel like for this whole run that they've been on for the past couple of years, this is maybe the project that has the weakest writing, if I could say that, but still good nonetheless. But Louis, do we go into the production?
Absolutely. I agree with you on the good rating. But yeah, let's go into the production. So Hit-Boy behind the boards once again. In my opinion, he had done a great job all the way up until Magic 2, which I still kind of like, because you had these epic classical cinematic productions that, in my opinion, played into like what a magic castle would sound like if there was music playing in there, where you have these mysterious and creepy strings that ring throughout it. So I feel like that was on theme. But going into Magic 3, I think that this is the most repetitive and stale soundscape that I've heard from Hit-Boy up to this point. And this was the nail in the coffin where it's like Nas really has to choose other beats moving forward.
Yeah, and I think that it's not necessarily a product of the beats being, let's say, underbaked individually, if that makes sense to you guys, at least for my end. I think that when you go beat for beat, there's going to be a lot of quality that you guys could get out of this soundscape. Example, something like the soul flip on Japanese Soul Bar. Like, I love that. That sounds fantastic. I feel like it matches Nas's cadence perfectly. It's curated for Nas, and that's great when it comes to that. But, when you're getting 6 studio albums in the past 3 years, I feel like you said, Lou, things could start to get stale. And this was a concern that I actually mentioned on a live stream to you before we even got Magic 2. I'm like, listen, I think it's one of the craziest runs producer-wise and rapper-wise, especially for this new era of rap. I mean, there is so much quality across this run. It's just that when you get 6 studio albums of it, the element of surprise kind of gets ruined when it comes to the soundscape, and the soundscape becomes predictable at a certain...
It becomes very formulaic, and that's what you're getting for most of this album is you're either getting some super boom bap drums with a cool vocal sample flip, or you're getting, again, a vocal sample, maybe from R&B or soul record from the 70s with some trap drums. That's really the two facets of the soundscape for me when it comes to this project. And I just feel like, I hate to play the comparing game, but when they've given us such quality albums in such a short amount of time, you kind of have to, because you know what they're capable of together. And I just feel like this soundscape lacked the grandness of songs like 30, which was super triumphant, and also lacked the musicality of a song like Nobody, where you're getting beautiful instruments like trumpets being introduced with some hard knocking snares and kicks. And it feels like it was a step down from that to a point where you're getting some cheap flute trap beats on a song like Speechless Part 2, and you're like, I know that you could get more out of them.
Yeah, and I would have liked them to maybe take a bit more time with the project, if that makes sense, even on the curation side of things, just to be able to maybe flesh out the production a bit more, or to be able to get into... And listen, I don't know what the curation process was, because maybe these were just songs that they had from the vault when they were maybe creating past projects, and they were like, well, listen, let's give the fans one more thing, which is completely valid. It's just that I think at the end of the day, you will see a bit of a slip when it comes to the quality of production on this. And one curation thing that I do like is maybe when the drums kicked in on Fever, where you get a bit more of a lead in and the production feels a bit more dynamic. But even at that, you're not going to necessarily get those dynamic components in the production all that much. And like you said, when it comes down to it, the two types of drums you're going to get on here are those classic boom bap, sort of drums that Nas does super well on, or something that feels a bit more trappish, if that makes sense to you, where it feels a bit more heavy hitting on the 808 side of things. So overall, I still think the production was good. I mean, you're getting Hit-Boy. It's a legendary producer in the game. It's just, is it the best quality beats that we've gotten from this run? I don't think
so.
And I
also feel like you do have a couple of instances of poor mixing. For example, in the song based on True Events, you have very nice horns that lead you into the track, and then as Nas's vocals come in, those horns get drowned out by these overbearing snares that just sort of distract you from Nas and from those nice strings that were playing behind as well. So that was another moment that I didn't enjoy too much, but I do love beats like I love this feeling in Japanese Soul Bar, like you mentioned. So there's hits and misses. Overall, the production is good, but definitely not the best soundscape that Hit-Boy could have produced for us. But let's jump into the replay value, because at this point, I'm someone that's going to weigh out my options. I've gotten 6 albums in 3 years. A lot of them are still fresh. I'm still bumping Magic, KD2, KD3 on a regular basis.
Album of the year contenders.
Absolutely. So with this one, I am going to play the game of, well, if this is not as good as this, and I'm getting a similar taste to what you cooked here, I'm going to go with the better project. And to be honest with you, this is not an album that I see myself doing full listens on. It's one of those albums where I might take out really a limited amount of tracks, bro.
Yes, I'm on the same page as you. As you said, when you have 6 studio albums to go through, you're going to take the best of the best, right? And your rotation is very limited. There's so many albums that you're listening to in 2023 and from 2022, 21, the beginning of the decade, whatever the case may be. So I think when it comes to this track list, like you said, I'm going to be taking maybe max 2 or 3 songs out of this, if I'm being completely honest with you.
I made my way to 4. So I got Japanese Soul Bar.
That's a lock.
I Love This Feeling, Fever, and Superhero Status. Those are my 4.
You see, Superhero Status for me was a bit of a letdown.
It grew on me.
Yeah, you liked it? I don't know. Even with the next listens that I did over the weekend, it just didn't make my rotation like that.
What about Jodeci Member? That was a track that I felt like was cool, but I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be spinning this back.
That's the thing, is that I feel like with that track, yes, you do get a cool production. You do get that KD sort of feeling from Nas's performance, but there's something missing from it, if that makes sense to you. I can't really put my finger on it, but it's not something that I want to go back to all that much. As far as what I'm going to be keeping out of this, absolutely Japanese Soul Bar. That is a top tier song for me off this album. There is no doubt. I'm going to be going back to, honestly, TSK. I'm going to be honest with you.
Really?
Like,
I really didn't like TSK.
you see, like, I was okay with it because I like the dark tempo of the production and I like Nas and that sort of feeling. So, I don't know.
It's that vocal loop that it's so irritating.
Yeah, but you see, it's irritating maybe because, like, it's kind of a tease where it's mixed a bit weirdly, but I like it because it gets me a bit eerie, you know? So
you know
like
what?
it.
The 1-800 Nas and Hit is another one that I would actually take with me. I felt like that was like the last dose of knowledge that Nas is going to give us part of this run, and he's sort of rapping about finally killing off the King's disease, and it just felt like he summed up this era of their partnership.
The outro was well done, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And then I'm gonna keep Fever. So maybe even at that 3 to 4 songs, like you said, Lou. I mean, give this a full listen, guys. I think it's criminal not to go through the entire album and give every single song a chance. I feel like you really do have to on a Nas and a Hit-Boy album. Give them the respect that they deserve. But as far as my rotation, like you said, Lou, 3 to 4 songs max. I do feel like there's certain curation choices in the track list that don't favor my listening. And I do feel like with the amount of albums that we have gotten over the past 3 years, going back to KD2, the first installment of Magic, like, you have Magic, pun intended, in this iconic run. So I'm gonna go mid.
We're gonna go mid
with the replay value. Something I never thought I'd say on a Nas and Hit-Boy album.
I know. It's literally the first time, I guess, if we're not including Magic 2, which we didn't review. But yeah, let's go into our overall thoughts. So when it comes to this album, I feel like this was the moment. This was the nail in the coffin for me, where it feels like Nas and Hit-Boy officially went into overdrive. It feels like for the first time this project is directionless, and like they've officially become out of new ideas sonically and lyrically. I just feel like there's nowhere else for them to go. They've reached their cap as a duo. They should start seeing other people. Give me that Nas and Primo album. That's what the fuck I'm here for at this point in their career.
I mean, I want to see how Hit-Boy curates his projects. Just to talk about both their careers and where they're at right now, it's very interesting because I feel like for both of them, this iconic run has been a big redemption for both of their careers and has kind of catapulted them into a different place in both of their careers.
It was a renaissance for Nas.
It was a major renaissance for Nas. It was incredible to see what Hit-Boy was able to do for the greatest rapper of all time over the past 3 years. So even my overall thoughts on this album, like, I just want to give them their flowers, man. Like, this run has been absolutely incredible. I remember the first time I listened to the first installment of the KD series, I was so happy that this was happening, and over time, I do feel like you got some incredible projects out of them. So from the entire NFR team, I want to send them their regards. Like, just incredible run. It was fucking legendary. And listen, you know what? This is overdrive, but fuck it. You know, they went the miles. They even went past it. They literally gave us the most they can. So as much as, like, I don't necessarily enjoy this project too much, I respect it because they really tried to serve the fans.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing
and
to
they
see,
even,
you know?
Nas is even rapping that on this album, that, he's like, we did this to feed our souls. We didn't do this to go gold. And I appreciate that so much because, like you were saying, the run has been incredible. It's been historic. And I guess I feel bittersweet because we didn't end off on the sweetest note with this album. But at the end of the day, when I look at the totality of what they've done,
it's crazy.
we feel blessed as hip-hop fans and as a community. So thank you to Nas and Hit-Boy, without a doubt. I think the album is good overall.
I think it's a good album. Enjoy it, sit with it. Maybe you guys find it great. I mean, you're always going to find quality when it comes to Nas and Hit-Boy, but as Lou said, thank you to that entire camp. It's been incredible, especially for the new era of hip-hop listeners, man. So many people might have not been in tune with Nas's catalog if it wasn't for this incredible run.
Who's ever done this, bro? Who's ever dropped this many quality albums in the span of 3 years? Maybe Lil Wayne during, like, and that's if you're including mixtapes, back in, like,
it's crazy,
the late 2000s, if you want to go there. But besides that, who's ever accomplished this?
Yes.
But this album was filled with leftovers. We're going to call it as it is, but ultimately, no.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're super grateful for the music. And yeah, guys, that's going to sum up the review for Magic 3 by Nas and Hit-Boy. Let us know in the comments, how did you enjoy this album? What are you anticipating from Nas to come next? And of course, subscribe if you have not already for more reviews in the future. And the link to our full album reaction is available in the pinned comment. Thank you as always for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Peace.